everybody. Welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking with Adam Dunn. Adam, it's great to connect with you. Looking forward to talking with you really about brand building and how you do it to grow your business. Adam is a managing director at Berkadia. He's been in the commercial real estate space for over 17 years and been involved in about $5 billion worth of transactions. So he knows a thing or three about commercial real estate and business. And Adam, I'm so glad that you're taking time to be on the podcast, because I follow you on social media, and I think you do such a spectacular job bringing yourself, your advisor role, your educator role, your student role, your teacher role, into really making people smarter with great content. I always, when I talk to clients, I always talk to clients that it's so important that you think of yourself as a media company, and that you want to be in 5 places at the same time. And because today you kind of have to. The average person has a attention span less than a goldfish. Nobody can remember where they saw you, where they read you, where they did that, So it's really, really important. And one of the greatest ways to do that is to give people a piece of information that they can actually do something with. And I think you do that really, really well. So I wanted to rewind a little bit and just kind of talk to you about the evolution of, because I think, somebody listening to this, if they're doing it, they're going to say, great, I'm going to learn. If they haven't done it, they're going to think the law of proximity is too far away for them to get started. And so if you were to rewind kind of how you mentally prepped to begin this social journey, right? The good news is you're going to help people. The bad news is for every 10,000 that listen, maybe one will do it. Yeah. And hopefully maybe more. No offense, Think community, but that's just science. Yeah. So talk about from the beginning.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much, Jon, for having me on your podcast. We've been doing it for several years, and I'm glad to add as much value as possible to your audience, and appreciate you asking me to join. Thank you for the kind introduction as well. My mind goes in 1,000 different places as you were talking about that. I'm thinking about the start of my journey, thinking about staying top of mind and omnipresence, right? Trying to be in 5 places at 5 different times or what have you. But my evolution in the social media branding journey started a little over 2 years ago, and it's been very, very intentional. I was at a brokerage conference, and at the conference, and there's 7 and 8 figure brokers on stage, and almost universally, every single one of them said, if you're not building a brand today, you're going to regret it in 5 years. And I kind of, did some self-reflecting, and most of my social media journey to that point was just putting out just listed or just closed announcements for deals. And when 7 and 8 figure brokers are on stage, and many of whom I aspire to be or be like, and several of which are mentors of mine, are telling me this, I'm going to listen. Yeah. And so in November of 22, I started a very intentional and proactive journey to build my brand presence online. And it started out rough. There are some posts that I attempted to make and trying to find my way, if you will, that didn't resonate with my audience as they do today. And but it's a journey, and it was evolving. And I very much have become, and I'm drawn to data. And in my focus, multi-housing brokerage, the data is powerful, right? It's my leverage to help advise clients. And I said, well, if I can post interesting data that I find interesting, maybe my clients find interesting, I think that'll resonate. So I started posting, actionable insights and market intelligence and data around the multi-housing sector, something that I've known for the last 17 years on LinkedIn. And, 6 months later, started to get some traction. And I remember my first post went viral in, call it May of 2023. Don't ask me what the post was because I forgot or I forget. But since then, it's been very intentional where I started posting 3 times a week. Today, I post generally 5 to 7 times per week. And a lot of it is around the multi-housing sector, commercial real estate sector in general. And a lot of it's, data and real-time market intelligence that hopefully my audience, which are mostly commercial real estate investors specializing in the multi-housing or living sectors, as well as brokers, follow me, and hopefully they find valuable. And through that, I've gone from probably having 1,500 followers on LinkedIn and my posts seeing probably 500 impressions per post to now I'm averaging 5,000 to 7,000 views per post and probably 11,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I'll hit about 5 million impressions this year.
Amazing.
People just viewing content.
It's amazing. And what I love about what you do, well, first of all, I just want to say you do multifamily sales in New England, right throughout all of New England. So what I love about what you're doing is, and where your business is so much different than my business is, I'm a business coach. And so I post things and it can be very evergreen. It can be very universal. It can be applied in a lot of different ways. If I were to go back in time when I sold apartment buildings, 23 years ago when I started, when I was 30, if I had the ability to really niche in, I sold apartments in Michigan. I mean, that's where huge value is. I just want to focus on something you said, because you talked about providing real-time value. Right now, by the time something makes it in print for, that's in many cases, it's a laggard indicator. And so people are craving right now the ability to make decisions and data to make decisions. And so real-time data, which by the way, may have a shelf life of an hour, may have a shelf life of a day, may have a shelf life of, name depending on what you're talking about. It's so priceless. And so for you to be able to spit it out, I don't mean to say spit it out, but, put it out there, 7 days a week, you're a live newsletter, basically. Yeah. And so I want to talk about that because, it's the intention behind everything. I think in community, we talk about there's postings, and I've said a lot on this show, Adam, that, don't count the likes, don't count the impressions, not that they're not important, but is your phone ringing? Yeah. Is your phone ringing with new business? And so all of that is important. I think it's even more important when you're in a niche space. And so I just want to kind of highlight to the Think community about intention. I want to talk about something you said about you're at the conference and, you're looking, and they're saying, hey, if you look 5 years ahead, you don't want to look back with regret. Somebody recently said this to me, that you want to make 2 people happy in your life, your 10-year-old self and your 70-year-old self. Right. And so one of the things I actually do, I read this book, The Art of Possibility, and I actually created an ebook, inspired by the book, and I give it attribution. But since I read the book a few months ago, every day I write a letter from my future self. It could be like, writing it for myself at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the quarter, however I kind of, forecast that out. So when you looked 5 years ahead in that scenario, what did you see if you didn't do it?
So, a lot of things were happening in at the end of 22 as I was going, through my social media journey or evolution, whatever you want to call it. The ChatGPT had just, one of their earliest versions, and, AI starts to become more meaningful in business. And as I think about the evolution of AI and what that's going to do to my business, coupled with, my job of business development, AI and automation should help people in my role and most roles become more efficient. And as I think about AI and automation in the brokerage business specifically, I think there's a lot of tasks that will potentially replace, humans in one way or another. One area I see is, automation of underwriting. That's something that I'm seeing in real time currently. Platforms that can take a rent roll in T12 and populate a valuation for me. And in addition to that, if I can layer in, BOV, you've been a broker before, if I can create a BOV sure. with a valuation for an owner in an hour or a day instead of a week or 2 weeks, that's powerful. Yeah. And so I think about, I'm going to get back to your answering your question, but as I think about the evolution of my role, and AI is going to make it much more easier and more efficient for me to do what I do best, which is meet with clients, understand their needs and objectives, and try to add value to my clients. Yeah. All the back office support is going to be more efficient, and I think it's going to allow me to focus on my core competency, which is building relationships. And you as a broker or as an advisor leveraging AI, if you're not in 5 years, you're going to be left in the dust. I personally believe that 95% of the business in the future, probably 2, 3, 5 years away, is going to be done by the top 5% of advisors, because they're the ones that are going to be leveraging AI and automation and technology to make their jobs faster, stronger, quicker, more efficient. And those that do not adapt to the technology are going to be left in the dust. I feel the same way about social media branding and presence. Those that can walk into a client presentation, you've been in those, and say, here's my BOV, Mr. and Miss Seller. We talked on the phone yesterday. Here's our BOV. This is our marketing strategy. Oh, and by the way, 10 million people are going to see your listing. And then broker number 2 walks in that does not leverage technology, or even if they do, but they don't have an online presence or social media brand. And the seller says, well, how many eyeballs can you expose my property to? And, I don't, I do it the old way. I don't have a social media presence. Who are they going to give the business to? Yeah. And I talked about this, 2 years ago, Bob Knackel, who you probably know or have seen online. I said to him, I believe commercial real estate is going to be like the Ryan someone's going to be like the Ryan Serhant of commercial real estate. Whereas in the ultra luxury residential business, these brokers have massive social media following, and they can walk into a home presentation and say, I've got 10 million followers on LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, et cetera. And this is why you should hire me. We're going to get you the highest price, but we're also going to put the most eyeballs on your property. Eyeballs will lead to competition and, hopefully identify an outlier purchaser. I think the same thing's happening in this in commercial real estate evolution with brokers who are now seeing, commercial real estate advisors now seeing the power of social media presence and being top of mind and being omnipresent. Yeah.
I mean, that was a master class of social media. Well said. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. I remember thinking when I about 10 years ago, I started my first podcast 9 years ago with my buddy, one of my best friends. We did a sales podcast. And the first episode, I was just thinking of it as you were saying, oh my God, my first post was, I was thinking of my first post. And when we did our first podcast, it took us 4 hours. We scripted it. And then we were like, oh my God, and then we just threw it all away and just kind of let it flow. Yeah. And it was great. And my first post I was just thinking about was, talking about this book and this business tip of You Can Negotiate Anything by Herb Cohen. And this tip in the book is hang up on yourself talking if you're losing a negotiation. And yes. People loved it. And I got a long shelf life from it. But what I just want to kind of talk on AI and all of this stuff is, but this is my point. I remember thinking 9 years ago, in 10 years, I'm going to have so much content, it's going to be hard for people to catch up. And that's what you're talking about too, is you're starting early. You've started early, and it's going to be hard for people to catch up. And so what I'm hoping people realize is it's the long game, it's the consistency game, and you gotta jump in. And no matter, in my opinion, and I agree with what you're talking about AI, and Bill Gates just came out and gave some stats about AI as far as how it will, replace many teachers and many doctors and things of that nature. But I do believe that, like, as you said, the top 5 to 10%, I think maybe more, AI produces content. It still needs an intelligent person to interpret it. And in your case, the continuum walks someone through and execute and facilitates a continuum. That I can't see AI doing that because there's such a skill set that is required of human to human connection. But I do believe that, in commercial real estate specifically, the question always is, how can we shorten the continuum? And right. AI, we can look, as you've pointed out, many areas where the continuum can be shortened, and that I think is really, really important. Let's talk about data. There's one of my favorite sayings is two sayings. One, if you don't bring data to the meeting, people just use their own opinion. Yep. And you can't negotiate fact. And so I always do my best when I give information to ground it in a stat. I do this new posting right now. It's called the Think Big Question Ideas Stat of the Day. I give one question for people to ask themselves, 3 ideas on how to implement it, and then 1 stat, right? Just so I can ground it in some level of data, because they will receive it differently from me, and I think just most anybody, if there's a piece of data that has attribution to it. So just kind of talk about not only the data that you choose to post, but how people receive the data and the shelf life of that data.
Sure. So a lot of the data that I post, I think what's most beneficial for folks is in on the investments side of the business, what's in the market, what is currently pricing, what does that pricing look like, what other deals are coming to the market. So being able to share with them, well, historically there's $3.5 billion worth of real estate that trades in Greater Boston, over $25 million every year. That's about 35 deals. We've done some analysis and projecting forward the next 36 months. I'm personally aware of, call it 116 deals that I know is coming to market, for $12 billion in consideration. So we're at a $4 billion a year run rate, plus or minus. There's another $500 million to $1 billion a year annually of properties more in the private capital space, sub $25 million that trade in our market. And I track this, my team tracks this, but to be able to go to an owner and let them know, well, year to date, there's been, $900 million worth of transactions. There's another $500 million worth of real estate under agreement. Most deals are pricing, 4.5 to 4.75 cap rate. We're expecting, this deal to, come to market in the next few months. They're able to make real-time, factual, and logical decisions about, well, is now the best time to sell my property? Is it a good time to refinance my property? What other properties will be in the market competing with my asset should I choose to sell the property? And how are investors looking at this? So every month I put together a multi-housing monthly recurring report that I post on LinkedIn. And, this is what's closed to date. This is how many deals and total consideration under contract. This is what's in the market, and provides real-time visibility to owners as they're evaluating what decisions to make. And I only give enough information that, it's all anonymous, right? When I put something online, but then that encourages engagement. So then if I put something out there, the recap year to date, I will have an institutional investor inevitably call me, walk me through those deals. And that's just another touch point of staying top of mind and creating value for these owners. And it could be the multi-housing transaction update, or I'll put out, insurance is a very top of mind theme or topic that investors are talking about today. So I'll go talk to an insurance broker, and they'll give me anonymous quotes of, in Greater Boston and come back and say, well, we're seeing, the last 12 deals we're pricing, $800 per unit in terms of insurance policy. I'll put that out online. That's interesting. And then I'll have another institutional investor call me and, where was that deal? This is what our policy looks like today. So it opens up this data, allows investors the ability to evaluate their own holdings and investment strategy, and then reach out to an advisor, whether it's me or one of my competitors, to talk about their portfolios and implications of some of this data.
Impressive, and it's so impressive. I mean, I just want to talk about a couple of things. One, marketing, think community should get your phone to ring. And so, I think, your impressions of 5 million and everything is so impressive, Adam, but we also want the phone to ring.
Right.
And I know yours does. And data, knowing your market, knowing your industry, it's so important. When I sold apartment buildings, my biggest competitor was Kevin Dillon. Kevin Dillon in your Detroit office.
Yeah.
And as I was 30 years old, getting into the business, all I heard was, we use Kevin. And he was a pace horse for me on what I needed to do to be knowledgeable about the business. And so it was a great honor to me. Kevin and I befriended each other as competitors, and we're still good friends. But we had a mutual client that had 6 properties, and he gave me 3 and Kevin 3, and we had to market them together. Wow. And so it was great. And really, it's if it wasn't for Kevin pushed me to be better. But he knew more then. He knew more when we were sitting at the table then, even when we were doing the thing together. And he knows the Detroit market unbelievably better than anybody. Mm. And so to your point, data matters. Knowing everything matters. But taking the time to actually do it, which to me is the through line of your story, right? As you shared, our team is doing this, we're collecting this, we're getting this information. And that's, to me, the barrier to entry that I see a lot of people won't make the time to do it. Yep. And so what is and you don't have to give away all your secrets, Adam, but how do you guys allocate the time to pause and gather the content, because it has a major compounding effect?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wish I could tell you that the answer is intentional time blocking.
Yeah.
To go gather that data, but it's I think what our team has done really well is create a culture of collaboration. And so if I'm having a conversation with an investor, or my partner's having a conversation, or one of our analysts or associates is having a conversation with an investor, just by doing our day job, quote unquote day job of, having conversations with investors, trying to add value and understand their business plan. Through those conversations, we glean insights and intelligence, because those people on the other end of the phone, they're talking to others in the industry, and we're able to pretty quickly piece together, if a deal's in the market with one of our competitors, well, what's the pricing guidance? Who's looking at it? Who's got it under agreement? And then we circulate that internally, and we maintain a list, if you will, of just everything that's happened in the market from a pipeline perspective, and that's an iterative and fluid process. It changes every day, but it makes our whole team smarter, right? So. Yeah. It gets sent out, and I've sent three or four emails today to the team of just conversations I've had and things that I've learned along the way of, so-and-so has this deal under agreement. This one just closed, this, some structure, this transaction, and being able to just collaborate effectively with our partners allows us all to be smarter. 1 + 1 = 4. Yeah. In that instance. So while we don't have intentional time set aside to drop everything and kind of gain insight, it's just through having conversations in our daily routines.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the key. It's part of your process. It's part of your routine. I
Yeah.
want to talk about passion for a minute because I think when you're passionate, I've known you for a bit, and even in this conversation, for those who are getting to know you right now, you know, if you're not passionate about what you do, then everything that you just shared through this whole, talk feels like work. But to
Yeah.
you, it feels like it flows through you. And I'm a big believer that when you are in your passion, when you're in alignment, you don't have to time block everything because it gets done because it flows through you. It's a natural thing that happens because intrinsically you're so connected to not only the industry and your career, but your clients, and serving them at the highest servant leadership level.
Sure.
And so, can you just kind of talk about, you've been in the industry for 17 years, how you found this to be your passion and how you keep that, passion kind of, engaged with yourself?
Yeah, another very good question, and it's you know passion comes and goes at times, right? This business is tough, as you know. There's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs, there's probably more no's than yeses.
Yeah, it's a game of no's. The
Yeah,
business is a game of no's. Yeah,
yeah, and those with staying power have a superpower, and you generally find those that are at the top of their game or doing the most business or have the most market share. They've been doing it for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. They've had the staying power. And I was reflecting this morning. Someone asked me to do a spotlight on my career for a media publication. So they asked about my career journey, and I'm probably one of the few brokers on earth that wanted to be in this business since middle school.
yeah,
That was a function of my parents were residential real estate agents in the town that I grew up in, and so I was just around that. And outside of that, before they were residential real estate agents, they had other small businesses. So I've always had this entrepreneurial mindset. But in middle school and high school, I thought I wanted to be a residential real estate agent and was creating business plans at 14 of this is what my residential real estate trajectory is going to be as a real estate agent. Then when I was in college, I took a commercial real estate investments course, and that changed my outlook and perspective of real estate. And I realized, I'm not the guy that is going to go on a home tour on the nights and weekends and pick out paint colors and think about those things. The commercial real estate aspect or the business aspect of commercial real estate resonated with me. And during college, the light bulb clicked. And it's like, I want to be in the commercial real estate sector. And I graduated college in 2008. And at the time, I'd reached out to the former firm that you and I were both brokers at some time ago, and there was an ad in the newspaper or some publication that said make $100,000 in the next 5 years or something. I was like, well, I want to make $100,000, but someone gave me some really good advice in 2008. They said, unless you have 2 years of savings, don't do it. And I just graduated college, I had $2,000 to my name, and definitely would not have survived for 2 years without a paycheck. So.
yeah.
I went to work for a property management firm that owned 14,000 apartments across the Southeast as a leasing consultant. They called it a manager in training, but when I showed up on the job, it was a leasing consultant, and I was getting paid $27,500 a year plus commission for that role. But that really prepared me, for my journey over the next 4 years to have that 2 years of savings. Once I had the 2 years of savings, I quit and went to work for our former firm.
Yeah.
And then, they say the rest is history, right? So from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be in the brokerage business, and that evolution has taken many twists and turns along the way. But it's definitely have passion for the industry. It's not, I'm not here for a participation trophy either. I'm a very competitive person. So we talk about, having a social media brand or leveraging AI and automation. Those that are not, and they're just doing baseline, you're going to have average life, average income. So once you find something you're passionate about and, go all in, and I'd say I lost my passion, probably 2020 to 2022, which was kind of a disruptive time in the business.
Yeah.
But then, after some reflection and, in 22, during the summer of 2022, kind of came to this realization, had a light bulb moment of looking back over the last, 14 years or so. It's been a really good career. I've learned more about myself and about life and working than I ever had, but really taking a step back and looking at the prior 14 years, like, wow, that's, something that your 10-year-old self would be proud of. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how can I get better? And so I made a decision in the summer of 22 to really, what is it? All gas, no brakes, right?
Yeah.
Is the phrase, but really kind of go all in and try to be the best version of myself, but really create the best outcome for my clients over the next several years that or however long I'm going to be in the business. So that passion kind of got reignited in summer of 22. And to your point, I don't feel like I'm working anymore. I feel like I'm just having a lot of fun, and it's more that what we're doing today is setting my team up, myself up for what the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years are going to be in the business. And we're pumped, we're excited, and we're here to really do the best job we can for ourselves to really make our clients win at the end of the day.
I love it. Play to win, don't play not to lose.
Yeah.
I love what you're talking about. I knew I wanted to be a business coach at 18. My dad gave me a set of tape sets by Brian Tracy called The Psychology of Success. And I thought, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to do this for a living. Prior to that, though, my grandfather built homes, and I would hang out with him at his spec home. And I thought, oh, I want to get into commercial real estate, because he would always talk about these investment deals, these random investment deals he would do. And then part of me also wanted to be the next Larry King, because I love asking questions and learning from other people. I interned at Channel 7 my senior year of college and realized I didn't want to be on somebody's lawn trying to get a quote when it was my kid's birthday. And so I scrapped that. And then, as you would say, the rest is history.
I think it's okay. And, I got caught up in this in my early to mid 20s of where I thought I had to have my life mapped out and, hit certain milestones by a certain date. But, those days came and they went, and, I'd get discouraged about it. But, and now I feel like, it's trust, just got to trust the process and the outcome. Yeah. And it's certainly taking the long view. So my advice to anyone that is trying to find their passion, it may not have it yet, or is trying to find it. And, some people may not like this advice, particularly employers, but go find something you enjoy doing. And if that means you're changing jobs every couple of years or more frequent than that, honestly, I think that's okay. Because you've got 40 years of your life to work. And if you're unhappy for the majority of the time, it's like, why is it even worth it? And I'm fortunate that after many iterations, I found what a firm and a role that I'm very passionate about, and I'm excited to come to work every day and work with people. But if you don't have that passion, go find something else. Yeah. And you may not have the financial means to do it immediately, but you should figure out what turns your light on, when you wake up in the morning, or what excites you, and ignite that passion. And it may not be the current role you're in. It may be something completely different, but figure out, go have multiple life experience, different life experiences, live in different places, and figure out what your passion is, because, life isn't fun when you're, dreading going to work every day. And
I agree with that, Adam. I agree with that 100%. And the only thing I'll add on to that, in community, if you can't do it because financially you can't do it right now, you can still have an idea journal where you keep it alive for a minute a day, right? Whether you type it in your phone or you write something down, do something to keep it alive, to keep, you can ignite it a little bit, to your point, every single day until you're ready. And that may be a week, that may be a month, that may be a year, it may be 2 or 3 years, depending on what your situation is. But if you keep on putting it out there, and to your point earlier, and surrender, the universe a lot of times will put things in front of you, whether you're aware or you can hear the whispers, or, choose that path at the time. the community, that's up to you. But I love what you're talking about, and I think it's spot on. All right, let's talk about you. You sell apartment buildings. You specialize in New England. Who's your ideal client, and how can they connect with you, Adam?
Yeah. So I would say I've got two different avatars on who my client is. I started in the business in the private capital space, and while my career has transitioned to more of an institutional investor space, I still work with a lot of families that are trying to figure out their disposition strategy. Here in New England or other parts of the country, we can connect you to the right advisor. But work really well with private families trying to figure out their real estate strategies or generational estate planning. Because I've sold everything from my first deal that I ever did was $350,000. My first transaction 12 years ago in the brokerage space, whereas currently, we're under agreement and selling, several nine-figure deals. So the evolution has shifted meaningfully, but because of being able and grateful and fortunate to be working on these large transactions and having conversations with some of the most intelligent investors in the world, I'm able to provide strategic advice to some of these private capital sellers that they're just not getting from more of the private capital brokerage firms. Yeah. We're able to take a much more institutional advisory approach to the private capital space, which proud of and grateful that we're able to do that. And on the other hand, we work with a lot of institutional equity investors as well as developers on their real estate needs. So we sell a lot of newer vintage, institutional quality Class A real estate.
It's great. I mean, congratulations on all your success. As you're talking, I was laughing. My first deal, after just grinding, I was 30 years old. I got into the business, were these two quads across the street from each other. So it was like 8 units in total in a city called Garden City, which was like a 40-ish minute drive from my office. And I was doing tour after tour after tour. And I thought, there's got to be more than this, Yeah. And then finally, after about a year or so, I got 5 deals, $100 million worth of listings all in 1 week from the compounding effect of just grinding it, from early, before sunrise to after sunset. And so it's great. It's a grind, but if you're passionate about it, I loved it when I was in it. And it sounds like you are too. And it shows in everything that you say, it shows in everything that you do. And in my humble opinion, if you're selling an apartment building, in this case, you need somebody who understands the bedrock roots of every angle of the stats, of the data, of what's happening in the marketplace, of what people are thinking before they even think it, what the impulsive client is about to think, to be not only in real time, but ahead of real time, taking the time. And so many things that you talked about, they apply to every industry, taking the time to make sure that you and everybody on the team is feeding real-time content to make clients smarter. So at the end of the day, they can do the most important thing that they need to do, which is make a decision in real time. And that is, not an easy thing to do. And to give a client the confidence that you can do that, and by doing everything that you do and have shared today, is just, I think it's just an impeccable way of looking at the business and community. I think all of this can be transferred to any business, and you can overlay it to any and every single business. I think it's outstanding. Quick speed round, Adam. A book that's had a big impact on you.
10X is easier than 2X.
Oh, I love that book. Love that book. Yeah.
That's my go-to answer for that question always. Yeah.
I think I've read almost all of Dan Sullivan's books. I love his books, and I specifically love his books that he collabed with Ben on.
Yeah.
And I think their whole collaboration is amazing because well, I'll leave it up for the reader, but
I know you asked me one book, but I'll give you a second because I'm reading it currently, and I was thinking about it when you were talking. You were talking about writing a note to your future self. You may have seen him on LinkedIn or social. Sahil Bloom. He wrote a book, The 5 Types of Wealth, that he just.
Oh yeah, how is that book?
It's really good. It's really good. He in the book, he shared a letter that he wrote to his future self, and which, when you made the comment, it made me think of that. But I'm reading it in real time, probably halfway through. It's a great book.
Okay, I'll check it out. You know what book I listen to a ton of books on Audible at the same time, but I'm reading the book is Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, which is amazing. It makes me sound much smarter than I am, I'm on a like autobiography kick, and his is fascinating because he's got so much of his what he talks about is the foundation of a lot of the things we're actually talking about. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna default to taking the long view, because earlier in my career I took the short view. I guess I should say, we're in the business of transactions, right? And it's challenging, I think, for many when they're new to the business. We get paid to sell things. So I think when you're new to the business, you're very focused on getting your first deal done. And having that mindset of, business development as quickly as possible, get to your first deal to sell, whether it's the right or wrong time for the client to sell something. And it took me, probably 5 to 10 years to realize that, before taking a step back and realizing that taking the long view is the best view, and now may not be the right time to sell, which means you're not going to get a paycheck, right, as a sales broker, but it's the right thing for the client. And you help your client win, they're going to remember. I remember when Jon told me I should not sell today. And when your competition told them it was the right time to sell, and then you're going to have a client for life if you help them win. So taking the long view and helping your clients win at the end of the day is you're gonna win.
Yeah. I've had clients call me and say, hey, we're doing this thing. We want you to also come and speak. And I'll say to them, I appreciate it, but if you have me come and speak, it's too much. Like, you're already doing X, so have me come another time. And they really appreciate it. One of the first guests I had on this show when I launched this podcast about 7 years ago was a gentleman by the name of Howard Behar. He was the former president of Starbucks. Not Howard Schultz, Howard Behar. And he was known as the soul of Starbucks. He's written a couple great books. I've had him on the podcast. He was on another podcast I have a couple months ago. And one of the story he talks about in the book that he shared was he had to lay off about 1,500 people, and he lost the list. And somebody found it, and they knew who was going to get let go. So he had this emergency meeting with all of his executives over the weekend to have this meeting on Monday to try to figure out what what they were going to say. And his executive assistant said, Howard, why don't you just tell them the truth? Because only the truth sounds like the truth. And he said, oh, that's pretty brilliant. So he went and he told them the truth. And he said, because of it, people who were even getting laid off came up to him and said, thank you so much for just being real. What could we do? How could we make this easier? And so I'm just thinking about it as you're talking about it, because people appreciate that specifically and especially, I think, from a broker. So I think it's great. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody can do today to get started on their social media brand is?
Make your first post.
I love it. Tell everybody again how they can connect with you and who your ideal client is, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. Adam Dunn. I'm a managing director at Berkadia. You can find me on social media, LinkedIn, and just my name, and type in Berkadia afterwards. My handle, I think, is Adam Dunn CRE. And you can email me at adam.dunn@berkadia.com as well. And we work with institutional investors, developers of multi-housing, and families who are trying to figure out their disposition strategy. Thank you, Jon.
Hey, a pleasure. You know, a lot of times people will call me and they'll say, hey, I want to get into the commercial real estate business. You know, is there a book I can read? You know, that's always kind of a thing. And I always say to them, there's no book you can read because you could only learn it by the doing.
Right.
But now I'm going to send them this podcast because this, I think, was a great masterclass on how to look at the business the right way, how to execute, how to serve your clients, how to think about business on a day-to-day level. So thank you so much. The community, if Adam can help you in the New England area, reach out. And I just want to highlight, do one post today. Makes a difference. Don't worry about the likes or the views or the impressions. Worry about that in about 12 to 18, maybe 24 months. Just get started. Find what rhythm and continuity works for you. But just get started. Adam, thanks, man. This was great. I appreciate your time and congrats on your success.
Thank you, Jon. Really appreciate it.